Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Happy Election Day. Joe Fryer will join us from the battleground state of Wisconsin a little later. And the day is officially underway. Polls in the East are now open this morning. That includes the battleground states of Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. But at midnight Eastern time, the very first in-person votes of Election Day were cast. This is a tradition in the tiny New Hampshire hamlet of Dixville Notch. And in a race that is neck and neck, of course, the 6 votes cast were split evenly between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We are just getting started on a busy and consequential day. We will be live with you through the whole morning. Each hour, we'll be checking in with both campaigns and taking you to every battleground state. We have correspondents fanned out across the country. And we have our friend Jonathan Allen standing by for analysis on anything and everything. We're going to begin our coverage on the campaign trail. In just a minute, we'll talk to NBC News correspondent Von Hilgert, who has been covering the Trump campaign. But we will start this hour with the latest from the Harris campaign. We have NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joining us from Washington. Mike, good morning. Great to see you. Great to start our election day with you. Before we look at today, I want to talk about yesterday. Vice President Harris making several stops throughout battleground Pennsylvania on the final day of the campaign, choosing really to exclusively spend her day in Pennsylvania rather than crisscrossing battleground states as the former president did. It's a crucial state, of course. She's visited it more than a dozen times as candidate. Walk us through her day and her strategy to stay in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Well, good morning, Savannah. Happy Election Day. Voters are voting, and the candidates have still some campaign stops to come. But yesterday for Vice President Harris, it really was a sprint to the finish in that key battleground state of Pennsylvania. 19 electoral votes. It's the biggest prize of the 7 major battlegrounds. And the Vice President had 5 different stops. She was kicked off a canvas reach out in Scranton, Pennsylvania to start the day. She was knocking on doors in Reading, Pennsylvania. Then she held 2 major rallies, one on the west side of the state in Pittsburgh, and then she closed things out with a huge rally in Philadelphia, just there on the Rocky Steps, where she closed her campaign with an all-positive message, not mentioning her rival Donald Trump, talking about the future. Take a listen.
We are ready for a president who knows that the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but based on who you lift up. America, we started this campaign 107 days ago. And from the beginning, ours has not been a fight against something. It has been a fight for something.
Now, Savannah, I was at that rally, just got back to here to Washington a few hours ago. Huge crowds, and there was not just the vice president, but a number of entertainers. We had Ricky Martin, Lady Gaga, will.i.am performing his new single, Yes, She Can, and yes, Oprah Winfrey making her passionate case for the vice president as well.
Well, Mike, I'm going to have to ask you before I let you go what your favorite act was, but we'll get to that in a minute. We know Vice President Harris voted by mail, though, to California. Her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, took part in early voting. Harris is holding an election night event at her alma mater, Howard University. Tell us what we're going to expect from the vice president today and what we'll see there on that campus.
Well, there's still some campaigning to do. We're going to see Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, who hopes to be the first gentleman in the United States, head to Michigan this morning. Tim Walz, the running mate, who hopes to be the vice president, will be campaigning in Pennsylvania again. And for the vice president, she's going to be at the Naval Observatory, the vice president's home, making last-minute phone calls. She's going to be dialing into a number of radio shows, all encouraging voters in these states who may still be on the sidelines or may be deciding between just not voting and voting to get out there before she comes to her alma mater. Really symbolic, important place for her to celebrate election night. But it's clear, and both campaigns are really planning for the possibility that we may not have a call tonight.
We all are bracing for that and for a long night and potentially long week. We'll find out. Mike, before I let you go, I want to talk big picture with you. You, of course, covered Biden for so long in that administration, now covering Harris throughout this campaign. I mean, it started with a bang for Harris. Just over 3 months ago, after President Biden announced he would step aside from the race following his debate performance against former President Trump and all the conversation that went around that, how was Vice President Harris able to pull together a presidential campaign that made her a contender as quickly as she did and really, especially initially, inspire a lot of motivation and energy around her?
Well, Savannah, this is the 5th presidential campaign I've covered, but I want to say it's the 6th because I've covered 2 in one cycle here.
Yeah.
Yes, starting with President Biden. Really a pivotal moment was on the night of that debate. We all remember when President Biden stumbled against President Biden. You talk to advisors to Vice President Harris, though, and they talk about her response that night, not sugarcoating what we saw from President Biden, but defending him and talking about the stakes moving forward. They said that was such an important moment for setting her on a strong footing for eventually when President Biden did drop out. Now, she inherited a significant, strong campaign operation that he had built and really capitalized on some of the major issues that have benefited Democrats up and down the ticket over these last 3 years, especially abortion rights. But she also did inherit some of the baggage from the Biden administration, especially voters' concerns about inflation. So when we see the results tonight, we'll see ultimately which was the bigger factor. Was she able to break through and make herself the change agent, even though she's been part of the administration for the last 4 years?
Mike, John Allen here. Just wanted to ask, with all of this blitz at the end with the campaigning through Pennsylvania, if they left anything on the field, if Vice President Harris didn't get something done, what do you think that would have been? Is there anything they wish they'd done, or do they feel like they accomplished all that they possibly could?
Well, John, you know this. Campaigns really often are scaling down, tailoring their battleground map as in the closing days as they see paths to victory, maybe closing off in some places, shifting resources to others. And the Harris campaign advisors told reporters yesterday they still see a path to victory in each of the 7 states. Now, we know that there's even another state that came on the battleground map potentially late, Iowa, that shock poll. There was a directive from the headquarters to some of the surrogates who maybe wanted to make a last-minute trip to Iowa to capitalize on that close poll. They were told, nope, we're keeping our focus on the Big 7. So an indication that if there is momentum that carries them to unexpected results elsewhere, it's a nice cherry on top, but they're focused on keeping the focus on those 7 key states.
All right, Mike Memoli, who'd you love most last night?
I got to say, I've seen Lady Gaga. It was interesting. 4 years ago, she was the closing act for President Biden as he was on the way to victory. It was interesting to see her again, the closing act last night, and a really nice rendition of God Bless America.
Okay, who knew? Mike Memoli, Lady Gaga fan. Love it. Learn something new every morning. Mike, thank you so much. We'll see you in a little bit. Now let's get to the latest on the Trump campaign. We have NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who joins us from West Palm Beach. Vaughn, good morning. Great to see you. So after a whirlwind last day of campaigning in battleground states, where he finished up his last event after midnight on Election Day, he was in Michigan. I know that's a little bit of a superstition maybe for him. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he's back in Florida. First, let's start on his plans for today.
Right. First, I think that we could all use some Mike Memoli, Lady Gaga analyzing here after the week that we should expect. This is going to be, across these 7 battleground states, as you noted, a tight race is the expectation of the Trump campaign as well. And that is where you saw Donald Trump last night finish up his final rally late into the morning in Grand Rapids, Michigan, after having an event in Reading, Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a morning event yesterday in Raleigh, North Carolina, where you and I last spoke. And for Donald Trump, he is now here in West Palm Beach, which is going to be the command center for him and his campaign. He's going to be leaving his Mar-a-Lago estate later this morning, we're told, with former First Lady Melania Trump. They've still got to go and cast their ballot. They're going to do that today. But then tonight, they're going to be watching the results come in alongside advisors and other close allies. The likes of Roger Stone tells me that he will be at Mar-a-Lago in attendance. And then we could very well see Donald Trump make his way across the water over to West Palm Beach at the convention center, where the press will be gathered and other supporters for potential remarks. Of course, in 2020, Donald Trump prematurely declared victory from the White House in 2020. And the question is whether he intends to do the same this go-around. We're expecting these ballots to be counted over the course of days. We very well could have a decision tonight here, but that is where a lot of this is up in the air. But Palm Beach is going to be the center of command here for the Trump operation in these hours and days ahead.
Vaughn, let's now talk about him wrapping up the campaign. You as well. We were texting when you said, oh, my gosh, it's going to be my last Trump rally. Late night rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan last night. I mentioned kind of a superstition for him, right? It's been a little bit of a tradition. Tell us what we heard from him in that last rally.
Right. In 2016, he finished up in the late morning in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In 2020, he did the same. Of course, he won one of those 2 elections. But last night, he was there beginning his remarks at about 12:30 in the morning, arriving late. He went and spoke for about 2 hours. He went on the attack against, of course, Vice President Harris, but also calling Nancy Pelosi a crazy, sick person. He also went on the attack against his former generals, John Kelly, James Mattis, John Kelly, and Mark Milley. And so for Donald Trump, I think last night was very representative of his freewheeling, unvarnished, attacking Donald Trump that we've become accustomed to over the years, one that was not very disciplined. You know, there was a lot of people within Donald Trump's campaign and allies that were hoping for a much more focused, even supporters focused Donald Trump this last week. But that's never really been Donald Trump's style, and it wasn't here in the closing 24 hours.
Vaughn Hilliard, we will be talking with you throughout the morning on this consequential day. Thanks so much for being with us. Now it's time to head to some of our battleground states, the places this election could be won, could be lost. We've got a team of correspondents standing by across the country. Antonia Hilton is in North Carolina. Blaine Alexander is in Georgia. Our own Joe Fryer is in the great state of Wisconsin, and Rahima Ellis is in Pennsylvania. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for kicking us off from these battleground states. Rahima, I will start with you because many see Pennsylvania as the one to watch in this election. It's one of the tightest races in the country. It could very well decide the eventual winner, as it did in 2020. Talk to us about the significance of where you are in Erie County and what you're seeing there this morning. Any inklings from people coming out to the polls so far?
Absolutely, Savannah. Behind me now, it's just a short line. It was a much longer line just before we got started. People started lining up before the doors even opened. Many of them saying they have to get to work, but they want to make certain that they cast their vote. Why is this area of Erie County so important? It's just 2% of the total population of Pennsylvania, but it has a big footprint in terms of presidential politics. Erie County has historically voted for the eventual winner in the last 4 presidential elections, and it's been known to flip its votes. It voted for Barack Obama, a Democrat, twice. Then it flipped in 2016, voting for Donald Trump. He won here in the county by just 1%. And then in 2020, it voted for Joe Biden. He won by just 1%. Here in Erie County right now, there's been a lot of talk about mail-in ballots and people being concerned that they didn't get their ballot right or they got the wrong ballot. The county's doing all that it can to try and straighten that out. One of the things it said is that offers people that they can come to this location and one of 149 polling places here in Erie County and cast what they call a provisional ballot. And we should tell you that the clerk of Erie County Election Board said that those provisional ballots won't be counted until Friday because they've got to get through everything else before then. That, again, is one of the reasons why this will be a place that people will be keeping their eye on. As you've been pointing out, this is a razor-thin margins in terms of who they expect is going to win this. So every single one of the votes, as always, counts. But it seems like it may be more important than ever this time. Savannah? Well,
we will certainly be watching, potentially waiting quite a while for. Rahima, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a bit. Let's move back north to our own Joe Fryer. Joe's in Wisconsin. Joe, good morning. Happy Election Day. Good to see you. So you are in Republican-leaning Waukesha County, but I know you picked this really purposely. That's why you're starting your day there. Tell us why this county could prove pivotal in deciding which candidates column Wisconsin falls into.
Hey there, Savannah. Good morning. You know, we've mentioned the words Wisconsin probably hundreds of times in the last few weeks, so I figured why not come here to cover the election. The polls here are going to open in about 46 minutes, so that's why it's quiet in here right now. But when those voters come in here, they'll come here to check in. Reminder, Wisconsin is a voter ID state, so you do need to have that identification. Also, look here, you see, you can still register to vote today. Wisconsin does have same-day registration. If you haven't registered yet, once you got that ballot, you head over here to these familiar booths, and this is where you'll cast your ballot. We are here in Waukesha County. It is one of what's known as the WOW counties. Now, WOW does not stand for awesome or excellent, even though this is a really cool part of the state. WOW stands for Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington counties. Those are the suburbs of Milwaukee. They have long been Republican strongholds, but over the last decade, we've seen Democrats chipping away at that GOP advantage here. You look back at 2020, President Joe Biden, he got 39% of the vote here in Waukesha County. That was the highest since Dukakis back in 1988. Democrats hope that Vice President Harris can at least get that, maybe even get to 40%. That would be the first time a Democrat did that here since the early 1960s. So if that happens, Democrats feel they have a very good chance. We know Democrats will have huge turnout in Madison and Milwaukee. We know Republicans will have huge turnout in the more rural areas, and there's a lot of rural land here in Wisconsin. It could all come down to these Republican-leading counties that have slowly been turning a little less red over the last 10 years, Savannah. We are here in the village of McWanago. Their voter turnout just 4 years ago was 92%. The clerk just told me she thinks this year they can hit 95%. That means these voters are incredibly engaged. They are expecting a huge line here when the polls open in a little more than 40 minutes, Savannah. And
we will be talking to you again in a little more than 40 minutes. Joe, thank you so much. Let's turn to North Carolina now. Antonia is there for us. We're back in 2020. Mr. Trump, he won the state, but I mean, just barely. I have been talking with so many organizers, even like on college campuses in North Carolina. Democrats have been very organized in this state. Does the Harris campaign have a better chance of flipping that state this time around? What do we think?
Savannah, they certainly think so, and that feeling is widespread from top organizers all the way down to very young people getting involved in politics for the very first time here. I actually got a chance to speak with Governor Roy Cooper, and he himself kept making references to 2008, the last time a Democrat was able to win this state, Barack Obama, of course. And he says there are a few factors here that are making that coalition, that feeling possible. The first, of course, is abortion as a major motivating factor, and there being so many unaffiliated voters in this state, many of them, of course, women, who are open to crossing the aisle, even if they identify as maybe more centrist or even a little bit to the right, who are concerned about abortion. They're bringing those people into their coalition. Then they have an immense number of young voters who are going to vote for the first time in many of the college centers in this state. And the party has made a huge investment in visiting those voters, in turning them out, and in messaging directly to them. And then the other piece is historic Black turnout. If they can get the Black community turnout at numbers close to 2008, and they have people who, they're dedicating their entire lives to this right now, to getting those people to polling sites like this one, that is the recipe they think could turn this state. And as you mentioned, Trump won this state last time by a very thin margin. And then for most of this cycle, thought that it was very comfortably in his column. Now what we've seen is he has been back and forth here every single day in these final days here, defending territory he should not have had to defend. That is making Democrats feel really confident today, Savannah.
Antonia, great reporting from North Carolina, a battleground we are all watching, important for both of their paths for 270. And we will catch up with all of you again throughout the show and talk in just a little bit. I want to chat now with our friend who's here on set, NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. He's here in studio. He will be throughout these 4 hours that we're live. John, good morning. Thanks for jumping in so far. I actually want to start with you on battlegrounds because I could see your wheels turning as Joe, for example, was talking in Wisconsin. What is it that you're watching for in these specific states? We know, and by the way, you can go on our website and play around with an electoral map. It's kind of fun. Click through who could take which ones and what a path to 270 looks like. But what are you thinking after we've just heard all those reporters?
Well, first of all, I loved watching Joe out there.
I know.
And I was like, this is so different for me.
Know,
sitting
he's
here.
Usually right here.
Yeah. But look, I think, in terms of Wisconsin, what does the turnout look like in Milwaukee? What does it look like in Dane County and Madison, which is, a huge voting turf for the Democrats? The rural vote, as that's expanding, if it is expanding, and I think we're getting some indications across the country, and it's not just in Wisconsin, that there may be some upswing in rural votes. How are those voters voting? Particularly, what are women in those areas doing? Is there a sleeper abortion vote out there that we saw in 2022? And then, sort of the other question I have is, what is the MAGA set doing, right? And you can tell based on where past elections were, it's not just that you want to look at the close places, not just the swing counties. A lot of times you want to look at what's going on in the ruby red or the deep blue places to see what that turnout looks like.
You mentioned sleeper vote, and I have got a bunch of things I want to mention and then kind of just throw it at you, see what you think. We saw that surprise Iowa poll, for example. I think there's kind of mixed consensus on how reflective that may be about what we actually see happen by the time polls close. But a lot of guesses about what could be going on there is that independent Iowa woman who's coming up for Harris based on abortion, right? We also have seen some polls indicating, people aren't always truthful about who they're going to vote for. Sometimes I think people assume that's a Trump thing, but I think also that could be women who are actually going to vote for Harris based on that one issue alone. What do you think about, like you mentioned, the sleeper vote, about in these battleground states? Because we're also seeing a lot happen with young men and Trump, right? Do those two cancel each other out? The women and abortion vote, the young men and Trump? Do you think both of those sets become what we're really watching late night?
I mean, absolutely. That is a huge part of this story. We saw in the NBC News poll that came out on Sunday that there was an 18-point lead for Trump among men, 16-point lead for Harris among women. Women tend to vote more than men do.
We complete the assignment.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and we've seen Donald Trump pushing for men, right? His campaign over the course of the last 2 weeks or so got very bro-y. And so, I think that's a huge storyline is, is the gender gap among women bigger? Is the gender gap among men bigger? And it's not just women voters necessarily. I think in some of these places you're going to see husbands and fathers, people who have been through the reproductive rights process in terms of, whether it's IVF, which there was an effort, at one point Alabama was banning IVF, or you're talking about care following a miscarriage, or anybody that's been through that process will have thoughts on this. So I think mostly women, but at the same time, some men as well. And you asked about Iowa specifically. Who knows? That was one poll. There are other polls that suggest that Trump is fine. I do think there's a narrowing in the breadbasket. I think a lot of sort of traditionally conservative voters, and I don't mean on politics, but just conservative-minded people, have gotten sick of Trump.
John Allen, lucky for me, you're going to be with us all morning. You wearing these just to make me happy?
Yeah, I was trying to match with you, and then I realized that they were a little cloudy, and I was like, I would rather see you than match.
They immediately come off. I'm like, do you need them or not? John, thank you so much. You'll be with us all morning, and we'll have you keep jumping in on questions. Speaking of polls closing, our election night coverage kicks off today at 5 p.m. Eastern with Tom Yamas and Hallie Jackson. At 6:30 p.m., Lester Holt and Savannah Guthrie take over as the results come in. We will be with you all night right here on NBC News Now. And we are just getting started on a historic election day.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.